2, 3.
If you have to love the truth just to know if it is true, wouldn't you love to know? If the essence of a thing begs to hear your tender wooing, wouldn't you love to know? If you can't know a part without delighting in the whole, wouldn't you love to know? If you'd never know a kiss without first cherishing the soul, wouldn't you love to know? To know as you are known, simply love as you are loved. Gently turn this fertile loam to unearth the fragrance of the lover's drug. From the far cloud-hidden star to the solitary bug, wouldn't you love to know? Frankenstein and Faust are yet the rage, unspeakable the severing damage done. Yet on the wind the distant sound of drum, and the sweetness of the sage still might come a kinder age. See the wonder-stricken child, hear the elders' wise in song. Wouldn't you love to know? Wouldn't you love to know? Wouldn't you love to know?
Hey there. Welcome to the sixth and final episode of my conversation with singer-songwriter and author Steve Bell. We've just been listening to a physically distanced but live studio version of the title track from Steve's current album, which is called Wouldn't You Love to Know? Now, I've sort of been saving that track up for this episode for a couple of reasons. One is because it's on topic, so that's kind of obvious, right? But the other is just because it's so good. And because the band on this live version is just, it's outstanding. I'm going to introduce you. Can we just nerd out on the song for a moment? So I got Steve doing vocals and acoustic guitar, of course. And then we've got Murray Pulver on electric slide. Murray is Steve's album producer for this album and co-producer with Dave Zaglinski of a whole bunch of Steve projects. And Murray's produced more Juno award-winning albums than you can shake a stick at. And we've got Micah Bell, Steve's son, on electric bass. And we've got Cara Luft, who's a Winnipegger, now living in the West in BC, but a Canadian folk music icon, playing clawhammer banjo. And then in the center of the screen, we've got this Nashville phenom, this fiddler named Jenny Fleenor, who just brings a kind of beautiful, mysterious quality to the whole track that just really is the icing on the cake. Anyway, I wanted to save it just kind of almost like a treat here for the front end of our last episode. Anyway, in the liner notes for the album, Steve and I will chat about that a little bit in the episode, but in the liner notes, Steve shares this quote from the anonymously authored 15th century Christian mystic work, Cloud of Unknowing. The quote is, "For God can well be loved, but God cannot be thought. By love, God can be grasped and held, but by thought, neither grasped nor held." We could probably just stop right there and think about that, right? And just lean in and spend some time there. But anyway, we're going to go on. And Steve goes on in the liner notes to reflect on his personal experience. And he writes that he hasn't come to love God because of what he knows, but rather he has come to know God because of what he has loved. Same idea, but in a personal vein. In the final event, and in this final episode, Steve and I chat about the notion that because God is love, it is love that leads us to the knowledge of God, not the other way around. And in light of that trajectory, I've chosen to call this episode, "And at the Center, Love." I hope that tracking along with these conversations has been as delightful for you as sharing them has been for Steve and I, and that you enjoy this final episode. Here we go.
Well, listen, okay, and this is my first time I've thought this way, but this morning I was in a vocal lesson. I'm now 3 times a week having vocal lessons because I'm 60, and it turns out, your vocals are connected to muscles, and these muscles are no different than these muscles, and at a certain point they're just not as supple as they used to be, and if you want to retain some of that capacity, you have to work for it. So I'm taking lessons, and what I learned slowly is that it's not about this; it's about all of this. Do you know what I mean? And there's because of injury, overuse, underuse, certain parts really, in a sense, become disassociated from other parts. They're not working together, and so there's certain exercises you to do that realign all the moving parts. Mm-hmm. Right. And once they're realigned and they're all working together, all of a sudden there's a freedom that comes and notes come back that you haven't been able to sing for 4 or 5 years. In my case, notes that I was never able to sing.
I mean, you're going to start singing like some of the early folky tunes in their original key, because that's an alarming thought.
Well, it's not the high ones that I'm it's not higher notes, it's lower notes.
Oh, okay. Actually. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm getting comfortable in my lower range in that I was never comfortable with, and I actually I kind of like, so I think, in the next 4 or 5 years, you can hear a lot of older songs by Steve, but it's not because I can't sing the high, it's because I can sing the low.
You're not going to need your capo before long. You just won't even
exactly.
need that thing.
Yeah. But the whole point being, and I think too, stand up, sit down, this is all about realignment, and it's physical, and it's audible, and it's visible, and it's tasteable, and it's smellable. I mean, the Orthodox, I think, really do get that, like all the senses, so there's incense, there's icons, there's movement, there's taste, there's hearing, and there's speaking. So it's all those things in a liturgy kind of get realigned, but it's also done in community. So community gets realigned. And again, none of this is magic. If you're harboring, hatred in your soul, this is not going to help you.
Except sometimes the community part of it assails that, because it insists that we do this thing that reaches toward mystery together with the person that we hate.
Yeah.
At least sometimes, right?
Yeah.
In the same room. And that can be a pretty realigning thing in itself, especially in a world where you can just gaslight somebody or just unfriend them and just I never have to face into that. I never have to lean into that challenging conversation or relationship.
Well, the other thing too is also lamenting when you're joyful and singing praise when you're sad. Like there's that sense that on any given Sunday, the psalm could be not where I'm at right now, but that person's there. And therefore, I mean, you start talking about now radical solidarity, that I need to join with the one that can't sing because they're sobbing over there, that kind of a thing. And that again is a realignment that I'm connected to this person, in a very significant and beautiful way, and vice versa. So it's all, if you use that realignment thing, that these practices kind of put all these things in proper working context that isn't a machine. This isn't German precision, car, where everything does only the one thing perfectly. I mean, it's flesh, right? There's a whole kind of a wooziness about it, because things, but that's also the beauty. That's why, you don't hug a car, you hug a person, right?
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's the wooziness, I think, Steve, that that brings us back to this pandemic informed by other pandemics and spiritual formation in the middle of these kinds of things, right? That it's the enfleshedness, the incarnation of it, the pliability, among other things, of all of this, that means that we can look back to lessons learned, to wisdom practiced and embodied in other situations of duress. And that's part of what keeps both the very ancient stories that comprise our sacred text, it keeps them lively, because otherwise we could just kind of look at them and go, different culture, different time, irrelevant story, as opposed to kind of going, no, lived spirituality, right? Somebody kind of looking at the world around them, which for them included suffering. It included things like epidemics and pandemics, and looking at that world and going, where's the divine in this? Where's God in this? Where's goodness in this? Where is love in this? And finding some ways to meaningfully both seek that, so chase it. Like I think about your devotion album cover, which I was involved with, the guy chasing his hat down the street. You know, that part of spiritual practice of pursuing something. But also the part that we've been talking about most of this conversation, which is the part that has to do with resting. And really resting and waiting for something. When everything inside of us is like, run, do something, be productive, be proactive.
Or fight.
That's right. Those primal things, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. And here we're invited to something that in some ways addresses all of those, which is to rest. To be.
And rest with others.
Yes.
And I think, if you look at something like, say, ancient practices, which not only connect you and I and us to our neighbors, but also, across time, the other really lovely thing about it, it takes you out of the center of your own universe, which the more I think about it, just thank God I hated being the center of my universe. It was just such a desperate place to be. There was so much at stake.
Fatiguing as could be.
Oh, it's fatiguing, and you got to protect it. And and if I'm all that is, right, then everything is a danger and a threat and a tragedy. But maybe that's not true. Like all the things that I love dearly, in their essence, are not affected by whether I'm here tomorrow or not. There will be love. There will be joy. There will be taste and smell. There will be sex. There will be there'll be all those things that just make life so fascinating and wonderful. Nothing will be lost with when I'm gone.
I want to. We could keep talking for a long time. I'm gonna just come to something from the notes in your album, which I think everyone should check out. But you're introducing songs with prose in this gorgeous booklet, and you've already referenced N.T. Wright, former Bishop of Durham, and in our conversation, and you reference him in one of the song intros. You write this: the world, or you're quoting Wright, N.T. Wright.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, this is brilliant. Yes.
The world is beautiful, not just because. If I start to cry, you can just pick up your own copy and finish it. The world is beautiful, not just because it hauntingly reminds us of its creator, but also because it is pointing forward. It is designed to be filled, flooded, drenched in God, as a chalice is beautiful, not least because we know what it was designed to contain, or as a violin is beautiful, not least because we know the music of which it is capable. Like this idea, and in preface to that, you write this sentence: ours is not a crisis of knowledge, but rather a crisis of love. And in many ways, the things we've been talking about, the practices we've been talking about, the history we've been gesturing toward in this conversation, Steve, it feels to me like it all could be understood as pointing toward this idea that what what the world needs now
Is love, sweet love, yeah.
right? And just more
Yeah.
of that, please.
Yeah.
And that the path to that is not just this grab your bootstraps and try harder. It's not just hone the idea. I mean, the
Or
effort
be
matters, but
nicer.
yes, right?
Yeah.
But it actually calls us to lean into the thing we would use a word like love for, and to depend on it to
Mhm.
such a degree and in such a way that if it's not there, we're hooped.
Right. Right. Well, you know what? I mean, and this comes from Christian theology, and but what I've been thinking a lot about lately is that even love itself is something that exists outside of me.
Mhm.
Whatever else we think God is, the Christian tradition says God is love. That's the Gospels. That's actually in the Bible. It's not that God endorses it, God recommends it. It's not that kind of thing, that God is love. In fact, when I love you, it's not my love I'm using to love you with. It's God. I'm using God to love you. I'm using the who-ness of God. That doesn't reside in me. The good news of it is that whatever I do here doesn't add or take away from that. Whether I live or where I die, whether I'm nice today or not, whether my grandson, dies of an illness, there's nothing that adds or takes away from that isness, of love. And whatever else we think about that in terms of our doctrines and all that kind of stuff, fair enough. But boy, I tell you, I'm hitting that one a lot more these days. And if that's true, then resting in the bottom of a boat in the midst of a storm doesn't seem all that impossible or even irresponsible. Because if that's true, all's well. And all manner of thing will be well,
Yes. And that's a beautiful last chord, Steve. Let's just let that ring. Hey. Thanks, my friend.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And so lovely to talk with you about these things. For those of you that have been just listening in on this chat, one of the things I want to say while Steve is still here is, first of all, thank you for your time and your generosity with your thoughts and your own life experiences and stories, Steve. But also that that I would cherish for anyone I know the kind of friendship that we enjoy. That takes some time.
Takes some time.
But it's good. It's good.
It's good.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too. Peace, everybody. Bye for now.